I see my role as leader, and as such, I think I'm always involved in external relations as the chief ambassador for the organization. So like a parent, it's not just about what I do or what I say, but it's about what I do and how I do it. So everybody's always looking at me to see, do I reflect the values of the organization? So in many ways, I'm always the ambassador-in-chief, or sometimes I like to call myself the cheerleader-in-chief. I need to think about it in terms of who my audience is going to be. Who am I going to be speaking with? Who am I going to be interacting with? In our environment, things are in such turmoil. It's critically important that I am out in front, understanding what's going on, interacting with other organizations, interacting with government, interacting with our community to make sure I have a pulse on where things are going, where our organization is and how we're perceived, and really how we'll use that information to change our strategic priorities. You know, there are many audiences I'm interacting with. I'm interacting with government officials often and really trying to get a sense from them of what they're thinking, how they plan to provide services to the vulnerable populations we serve. And for us, it's not just about the organizations, it's about the population. So I'm always advocating not just for Astor, but for the kids and families we serve. And that's critically important in a time when so much is changing. We don't want government to really lose sight of the kids and families. So that's a critical role. The other one is internal. I'm an internal ambassador, that people, the staff doing the work, want to make sure that I understand, you know, what's going on. I understand their stress, that they see me as accessible. They see me as somebody who is championing their cause, and that, you know, I am always out there talking with staff, listening to staff. So that's, I think, an important and sometimes overlooked role of the leader. Most important, you know, I always want to make sure I'm listening to our clients, you know, what they say about what their needs are and what they perceive as their experience with our organization is critically important. Because at the end of the day, it's really about client satisfaction. And if we have satisfied clients, I think we have a bright future. And if we don't, I think we're going to be challenged to continue. So, you know, there are multiple roles. I think I spend a lot of time not just doing the work, but thinking about how do I do it differently. So even when I'm at my desk, I'm thinking about, you know, how do I present Astor in the best light? How do I best advocate for our kids and families? And how do I make sure I have the most up-to-date information about what's expected in the future? So, you know, being the ambassador is a job that just never stops. So that's kind of how I think about it. Irene, what about you?
You know, Jim, I wholeheartedly agree with your comments, and particularly the comment about our role as ambassador-in-chief never stops. When I think about all that I do throughout the day, there is always the underpinning of my representing the organization externally as well as internally, and helping to drive our vision. And I must tell you that we live in an urban community here in Tampa, and it's complex, and there are many meetings and many events that you know, agencies would like the CEO to attend. And I have to struggle to determine which meetings and which events and which committees I become involved in. But at all points, it is about my representing the organization, representing the people that we serve, and really always doing that with our values. And the three values that I think about is that we always provide a timely response to our funders and community, as well as the people that we serve, that we are always transparent, and that our overall values on the focus on children and family well-being of the children and family is always in forefront. So for me, I think about the ambassador chief role being embedded in every conversation, in everything that I write, in my interaction with the board, with external community agencies. There are some things that I hold on to very close. For instance, all contract negotiations. I have to be up to date on all the information that's happening in the community, in the nation, and within my organization to bring the right perspective to contract negotiations. And I lead that from my organization. I attend high-level meetings that other CEOs and certainly the CEOs of the funding agencies or regulatory agencies are attending. It's critically important that my team keep me up to date all the time on what's happening. And I get so involved in representing the organization that if we have a couple of, really challenging cases that may get, families or children that may get some media attention, I stay involved in those cases because at some point I'm going to have to represent that on the outside. And I try to quantify how much of my time is spent on Ambassador Chief, and that's really difficult to do when it's embedded throughout all our work. I was guessing about 30% of my time is devoted to external formal activities. So that was an easy number to capture, but really it's throughout the complete work week. And when I go to a social event on the weekends representing the organization, even when it's not related to the organization, my function is Ambassador-in-Chief, and I have to represent the values, the products, the needs of the people that we serve. So I think that's probably one of the greatest overarching pieces for the role of CEO in a nonprofit organization. One of my favorite aspects of my position as CEO is the engagement of our board members in external community relations and functions. And I'm here at the Children's Home about 3.5 years, and we have a board of 27 members, and then we have a foundation of another 12 members, some of which come over from the board. But when I came on board here at the Children's Home, I faced a real challenge about how do I get to know all the board members and engage them in meaningful activities, because that's why they're serving on the board. And so I did something that really reaped fantastic benefits. I met with each board member, some by phone, some in casual conversations throughout my first year, and for many meeting one-on-one in an individual appointment. And I asked everyone a series of questions regarding their expectations as board members, their past experience, particularly those things they felt were very meaningful and that they made an impact on, those things that they did not like and felt was perhaps a waste of their time. I asked them about their interest in general in their personal life, and then at the end I asked them about their personal contacts. And from that I was able to garner up a profile for each board member, and really provided me a Rolodex when issues came up. And I'll share an example right now. We had a conflict with another agency and a funder. And, I had several conversations with the funding agency and couldn't persuade them to quite see our position. So I invited our former board chair, Carolyn Harbert, and our current board chair, David Eichheid, to join me in a conversation with the funder. And this is a funder who is very community engaged. And when I came to the meeting with our two board members, the atmosphere of that meeting immediately changed. They were clearly very pleased to have two board members join me at this meeting. And not only did these board members join me at the meeting, but they were well-versed in the issue. They were able to participate in meaningful discussion and meaningful resolution. And in fact, it made my job easy. So easy that I walked away from that saying, this is a formula, this is an approach I need to maintain throughout other situations that could be similar to this or even a bit different. Of course, timing is important, and it's super important that the board member is knowledgeable and certainly passionate about the topic. And then we had something else happen months later, and I invited a board member. His name is David Kennedy. He's a strong leader in our community and very well respected and involved. And I asked him to join some of the sessions where contracts were being put out to bid. His presence was immeasurably important, and he made it known that he backed the children's home and felt very strongly that we should be funded at a greater level, in fact. And we prevailed. That worked out really, really well. But I credit his attendance and promotion. He was really functioning as an ambassador for the children's home. And so for me, I have learned a great lesson here at the children's home that whenever there is a public event, an opportunity for people to speak at the podium at county commission meetings, funding meetings, that I almost always invite a board member to join me. And I base that invitation on the interest that they have, where they seem very engaged and passionate and can have a strong impact on the delivery of the message. Sometimes I have little to say, and they have the most to say about the issue. It is really one of the most gratifying aspects of my position here at the Children's Home. Jim, I'm wondering about your experience in this area.
When I think about how to engage the board in these kinds of activities, we struggle with that sometimes. However, our External Relations Committee has really worked on it and really challenged each other to come up with ways in which that board members can get better engaged with the community. And so what we've come up with is really working with each individual board member and asking them what kind of role do they want to have with the organization with regard to external relations. So we give them a choice of 3 roles. They can be an ambassador, that they're out, they're talking about Astor, they have the proper kind of talking points so they feel comfortable about what our organization is doing and how it's impacting the community. They can be advocates. They can work with us for with government officials. It certainly is much more powerful when a board member joins me with a discussion with a community leader to talk about, some of our challenges. And for example, we have the executive director of Catholic Charities, Monsignor Sullivan, on our board. And he is a very powerful person in New York City. And we are very fortunate that he's able to both advocate on our behalf, but also bring along organizations like Astor. I'm also fortunate to have a board chair, Jim Ramo, who is really working hard to make sure that the board is engaged in all the different activities. So really trying to help them decide where they're comfortable. And then we have the chair of our external relations who really is extremely motivated into saying, okay, what are the roles are you most comfortable with and how can we support you? A very specific example of where the board, I think, became an important ambassador was when our planning committee is really thinking about the strategic future of one of our programs. And the planning committee said, we've got to go and see the program. And they went, they visited the program, they talked to staff. And so again, it not only empowers the staff because they feel people who are important care about their work, but they also feel that the board understands what's going on. And for me, once the board gets involved at that level, they are able to talk with much more passion about the kind of work we do, and I think that's critically important. And so, what I try to do is when I have events, I always ask people, are you interested in talking here? Would you want to say a few words? And so really being sensitive to their own comfort level, but also the importance that they play in the organization. And so I'm always looking for opportunities for them to do that. So at the end of the day, being an ambassador, it's all about relationships. It's relationships I have as CEO with the community, with government relations, with staff, so on and so forth. But since I can't be everything to everybody, I have the board who also has their relationships. And so what we try to do is help them see that they can leverage their relationships on behalf of the organization, and it can take many different forms. I'll give you an example. We were struggling with how to engage our community leaders about our work, and the local Chamber of Commerce had, very well known for their breakfasts. And so we had a board member who said, listen, I'm very close with the president of the chamber, and let's talk to them because they would know how to do this. And the result of that relationship was a 10-year event that we co-sponsored with the chamber that we called the Public Policy Breakfast. And so that's a real example of how we leveraged one of the relationships of a board to promote Astor. Another example is one of our board members was very friendly with the president of the local Notre Dame club. And being a Catholic organization, I think there was very good alignment with our mission and values in Notre Dame, and we were able to use that. He made the introduction, and we were talking about what the kinds of things the Notre Dame Club was interested in, and as a result of that, they have been a great partner, both in fundraising at times. They support a service student from Notre Dame who does an internship here every summer. They do a day of service, and so there are many different ways in which that has kind of helped the organization. So it's really about leveraging the relationships, and both mine and in the board on behalf of our organization. Irene, what do you think about that?
Well, clearly, board members and staff all have a piece of being an ambassador representing the organization within our community with stakeholders and governmental entities, donors. But I want to focus on the donor aspect for this pod. Since we know who our board members have contacts with, we know who our board members work closely with, we have engaged them in grant writing and fund development. And I'll give an example of that. There is a local foundation that is very selective in the organizations that they work with, and we had a really difficult time breaking through and getting them to pay attention to our proposal and coming out and visiting us. So we discussed it at one of our board meetings, and a board member said, I know the chair of that board really well. Let me make a phone call and see if I can set the stage. Sure enough, she did that, and then within about a week, they invited us out to have a casual conversation. She joined me at that conversation, and it really opened the door for a deeper look at our proposal. And so they asked us to submit a proposal, and shortly, within about 30 days, we received an approval. I must tell you that that would not have happened without the engagement of our board member, Nancy Afield. We had another situation in which another foundation, it's a statewide foundation, puts out RFPs, and we have applied several times with rejections on each and every turn. And so we again spoke to the board about this particular foundation, and one of our board members indicated that she would be very happy to help out in opening the door and laying some groundwork. So she made a phone call, and then to our application, she attached a cover letter which really provided an endorsement for our proposal as well as of the organization. And that, too, resulted in a positive return on our application. So I can quantify it from a dollars and cents perspective, and I can't quite quantify it on an overall impact on the organization, although we know that having 30-plus professional leaders in our community out there talking to folks at cocktail parties and fundraisers and at their job makes a huge impact for the work that we do. We certainly couldn't afford to hire enough marketing people and outreach staff to do that work. So really, I am forever grateful to our board members and staff for all the outreach and involvement they have as ambassadors for the Children's Home.